Welcome to this video, guys. I'm gonna do a mid-high fade in this video. The only difference in a mid-high fade is that it's a mid fade but it's slightly raised from the front. I chose mid-high fade for this client because I know that will frame his face perfectly. It should sit in the middle of the forehead and still give me enough bulk to give the head shape a strong square structure that'll keep it from looking rounded. I'm gonna start sectioning the hair, see where the hair naturally wants to go. I'm gonna start from the crown area, find the natural path of the hair, and then clip the fringe from the corner of the forehead on a 45-degree angle, and on the other side I'm gonna find his natural parting. I like to keep it low, but I also shouldn't be too over directed or forced. I'm gonna start by cutting my first guideline, which is gonna be angled back as I discussed, a little bit higher in the front and lower at the back. Starting with Babyliss Pro with the blade open 1.5 guard on. I start from the middle because it gives me more control over the trajectory and also the head shape. You can check the widest part of the head by using your comb, so see where it balances, and that's exactly where you should start if you want to control the head shape completely. It also allows you to control the angle a lot more as well. To get a clean, controlled guideline, you want to use your comb to hold the hair in place while you're making passes. I'm trying to show you the technique, but it's a bit harder when you're filming. Once I'm done with the initial thing, I go back and clean underneath it. Most of the time you'll notice the back is always darker, it's thicker, it's also patchier. So you might have to go back, clean it up a bit more. You may have to use a bit more pressure, different angles, or even close the guard halfway or fully to get it as close as you can to the front. Otherwise, move on to the next part. The next one is everyone's favorite, the bald guideline. Pretty straightforward, just follow the guideline on top exactly. Because this is a heavy fade, so you only need to leave about 2 fingers distance between the 2 guidelines. And then also make sure the angle is also true to the top guideline, so it has to be visibly true. It doesn't have to look exactly the same, but it just has to make sense. Sometimes I keep the back a bit lower, the way I'm keeping it now. If I feel like the back is too thick, so I need extra space to fade it, I'm gonna take it out, but that was just the way I would do it if I felt that it's too thick to fade in 2 finger space. Once I'm happy with the angle, I go back and clean it and sort of make it neat so I can move on to the next step. I like to work really neat, but you don't really have to do it that perfect. It doesn't make that much difference. Now I'm gonna use the foiler. So I'm using the foiler right after the bald guideline because it gives it a little bit of extra sharpness to the fade. In this step, the few things to notice are that you want to use a bit more pressure at the bottom, just like that, and then you release it as you go up. Even when you're using a foiler, you're still fading, so keep that in mind. Still gonna face your foil exactly to the guideline, no random strokes, you're still fading, so you use extra pressure and you release it as you go up. That way it'll give you a sort of dark transition going up to the guideline, which obviously will help you take that line out because you have a little bit of fading build up to that guide. Especially if you struggle to take that line out, it will definitely help. Also, you can use the foiler in the end if you're not comfortable with it, and that helps you sort of visualize the whole thing and you don't go too high. For the next step, I'm using my Wall Senior with the fade blade. Because it's a heavy compressed transition fade, I'm using a 1 guard with the lever closed. I'll be going about halfway in the transition with a little bit extra pressure at the bottom and releasing it slightly when I go up. When I said extra pressure, I'm serious about it, so I use a bit of extra pressure, especially if I'm using 1 guard instead of 0.5, because I want a clean, clear guideline that is visible. That's probably not how I would fade every hair, but with some patchy and some difficult people, I like to do heavy compressed transitions, and that's the technique I think works the best. And at the back, I like to go over it a few times, use even more pressure if you possibly can, because you want that to be even or sort of similar looking to the front. You must have already noticed that back always takes longer, more pressure, sometimes even more space. For the next part, I've opened the guard, making it into 1.5 now. So 1.5 should blend it all the way into the ridge, but you will notice again the back will not blend as easily as the front. You don't have to put too much pressure in the front, but at the back you will have to put pressure in. You have to make extra passes, and sometimes it's still not enough and you have to go sketching in it. by closing your lever halfway. So not fully close it at first, close it halfway. Try that and it should work most of the time, but with really patchy or really thick hair at the back, you might have to close the guard fully and then sketch with it. We're aiming at making it look as even as we can. You might have to open and close that lever a few times just to get that, nice evenness throughout the fade. It might not be perfect still, but as long as it looks roughly the same, we can move on to the next step now. With no guard on, I'm gonna close the lever fully. That makes it 0. Actually, that might be finer than 0 because this is a fade blade on Paul Senior, and this is one of the sharpest blade on the market. And if you notice, I'm starting a millimeter below the line and moving past it by 3 to 4 millimeters. And you can do that with confidence. Don't worry about overlapping it a bit. It's just part of the heavy fade. So it looks like you're creating another guideline, but it'll be all fine in the end. And now I'm getting rid of that line underneath it with a little bit extra pressure. You can also do it with the same trimmer that we used to cut the bold guideline in the first place. I instead use the corner of the blade and try to come in from different angles. Sometimes that's enough. And now I'm going to open the lever and go in from the middle, about 1 centimeter. Starting from the middle again because it gives you a lot more control starting from the middle. It gives you a lot more control starting in the middle, and it helps you visualize how the fade is actually going to look like when you finish. Even if you look at it now, it looks like a fade now. Of course it needs detailing, but you can see it take shape. Now I'm of course working at the back. It's taking more pressure. I'm probably going a little bit higher. Obviously it's taking a lot longer than the front. Front is almost done. I don't think I have to go back and do much in the front. After the 0.5, which is open lever, I'm gonna close the lever halfway. I'm sure you all done that. You open the lever fully and then you close it halfway. And that's, I don't know what that length is, but let's call it quarter. And then you sort of smoothen the area between 0.5 and skin. You don't have to do the whole thing. Just try to spot all the dark spots and problem areas and try to smoothen them. Sometimes you don't have to even do this step because not everyone has thick dark hair like this guy, so you have to put in a bit of extra work. Also, you have to remember this is a heavy, more condensed fade, so it'll take more work. So this is 0.5 guard on, and I've opened the lever fully just to start a bit more safely. So I'm starting in the middle again. As you can see, the fade is already looking pretty good, so I'm trying not to overfade it or create a new guideline for myself. So this is sort of a sketching step. So what I'm doing is I'm just using the corner. I'm just attacking the darker areas, just looking at the fade visually and just trying to make it better. All I'm trying to do is make it look like it's sort of naturally fading up. I'm gonna detail it a bit more, but it's actually pretty good as is. I'm gonna put a 1 guard on and maybe go closer to the ridge now for the detailing. If you notice, like I'm going a lot more closer to the ridge for the detailing, just attacking the dark areas using the corner, also stretching the skin at the same time. That helps you to get rid of some stubborn dark spots. That's a 1 guard I'm just trying to show you if you didn't notice earlier. So that's why I'm going a lot more close to the ridge. You can stretch the skin and do all sorts of things to do more detailing. It depends on like how much you're charging, what level of skill you're at, and what you're really looking to get out of a fade. Sometimes we barbers overdo some things and obsess with it endlessly. So you have to look at your own situation and find your balance between perfection, creativity, and efficiency. Now we're gonna move on to the ridge. And it's a pretty good ridge. I like the ridge to be slightly wider from your cheekbone. It can be parallel, but I like it slightly wider. So it's good enough, but it needs to be more smoother. So I've got the 2 guard on and I usually just flick it. So it's halfway open and I sort of flick it. And I'm using a different clipper that is not a fade clipper, mind you. It has a taper blade on it, so it's much softer. So what it would do for me is it will blend it in, but without creating a guideline. So all I'm trying to do is just sort of flick that last little bit in. So I'm not trying to take more than a millimeter or two, so I definitely don't want another guideline there. So all I want is just anything that is sticking out, I want it gone, and I want it gone without creating a guideline, and I want it gone without having to detail it endlessly. It's hard with that angle with the camera. Usually it will be a pretty easy step. So I'm holding the hair down and making some passes. They're not parallel to the head. They're parallel to the angle that I want to create, which is coming out a bit. So keep that in mind. At the back, again, it's taking a bit more work than front, It's not a shock at this point. We can leave it at this and move on to the top, and it'll be just fine. But it's a good opportunity to talk about scissor over comb, which can give you a lot better premium finish. I notice a lot of people don't know how to do this step. They come in with the comb anyhow, they dig in, they're using whatever angle. You're supposed to stay parallel to the surface and only cut the things that are sticking out. So you want to sort of follow the surface and see what sticks out. So that's like barely a millimeter, and that's all you need to cut. Because we already done 2 steps with a clipper to create that ridge, there shouldn't be that much hair, that's obvious. You can see from this angle there's barely anything sitting on the comb, and I'm just cleaning it and sort of straightening it up. There's not actual cutting involved as such. It's more like polishing the surface. It does make a difference when people live with the hair and add to the quality. This is another technique where I go in with like almost 90-degree angle with the scissor. It's just a way to target imperfections very precisely. But if you're not an advanced or intermediate at least, then don't try it just yet. We'll probably make another video specifically about that. Now I'm gonna start with the top. I know a lot of guys are not interested in learning about the top. Everyone just want to learn about fades. But remember guys, the industry is changing. Everyone's more demanding now, and if you especially want to charge premium prices, you're gonna have to learn every aspect of barbering and be able to do all demographics. Getting back to top now, this is not a very common sense layer. One side is really long and the other side is so short that it's almost forming a triangle. And let me show you the side that we're not parting. The opposite side is actually cut parallel to the head shape. It will be cut parallel to the head shape, but you can see it against the white background. Starting from the parting side, I'm gonna get the hair in a nice section and then cut it almost straight. So at this point, I'm not really worried about angling it as much. You'll see more of the angle when we get to the middle or other side of the head. Now I'm gonna point cut the top of my finger, and that's my guide, and that's the length I've chosen. Now the reason why I did point cutting on him, because he has really thick and straight hair. And now I pick the next section up and I can see my guide through the hair, and I'm gonna cut anything that comes on top of it. Now point cutting it's good in this situation. I know it's very fashionable, but in some of the situation it's the worst thing you can do. Now that little point, don't worry that much about it. You can get to it later. Just commit to your line and commit to your guide. Because he got a little bit of spiking issue as he has really straight hair, so I'm gonna do the back differently. So I'm gonna leave the back longer so it collapses on its own weight. So I'm doing an angle leaning forward, leaving the back a bit longer, and I left that section out of my initial layer because I didn't want it to be too short, because I see like it's still trying to spike that thing. It's brutal. Like with some people you can never fix it, but I'm managing it pretty well, because when this client first came to me it was much worse than we have now. We can get to it with the texturizing scissor, and we done a good layer already. So now we're moving on to the middle section. You'll notice the angle is a lot more slanted now. It's not as straight anymore. And I'm gonna see my previous guideline closer to my knuckle, and I'm gonna sort of match it and ease it into my last guideline. So that gives me 2 guidelines now for the next section. So one I can see there, and the other one dictate my angle closer to my knuckle. So So you gotta commit to both of them and stay within that, and that pretty much gives you what you're supposed to cut. And the next one is exactly the same. So I'm gonna sort of get that angle right, and then so ease it into that angle. So this angle is even more steeper, almost 45 or if not more. Another thing to keep in mind that you gotta pull it a little bit back, so it's over directed a little bit back. So I'm not cutting parallel to the fringe because that'll be a bit too short. So you gotta bring it to the wider part of the head and find your angle. So this is sort of like easing the last angle into the final angle. That gives you a really nice head shape. So now this last bit where I'm gonna be like cutting parallel to the head, but be careful doing this because you don't want any roundness, so the angle should be more straighter, like that way, not going too much in. So because we created that head shape and we worked so hard on it, we do not want to disturb it. We do want to commit with the previous head shape we decided that we like. Now I'm gonna do a little bit of scissor over comb and get any of the hair that is sticking out that we didn't get in the layer, but being careful with the head shape. We don't want any roundness. That will ruin the whole effect of this haircut. And do you remember the corners we left? We're gonna get rid of those now. So we still don't want any rounding or too much perfection on that side. The reason we kept those corners because we want that side to be the longest. So now I'm being very forgiving, but I'm getting rid of some of the long bits there that we didn't really get to. And that's it. I don't want it to be perfect. It's just like anything that just obviously off. Okay, this is one of my things that I really like to keep the back coming out like a triangle. Just like the ridge, I just follow the same line and never really round it in. I try to keep the maximum length I can without coming out too much. But if the hair was longer on top, I would have actually gone more out. So the longer the hair is, the more difficult angle you have to do. You have to come out even more to sort of match the hair on top. And that's how it usually works. Another way you can look at it, like how wide is it from the sides, and that need to be proportional to the back as well. So it has to be coming out just as much from the back as it is coming out from the side. It can't be just really flat. I see a lot of people do that, and it looks really disproportionate and ugly when you see it from a profile angle or even the back. I hope I made some sort of sense there. Okay, so since this guy has thick hair and he also has very straight hair, it's gonna need texturizing and thinning at the same time. So if you notice, I'm coming from the angle that it will be styled to, and my cutting blade is coming from the same angle back to front. If you just want to add the texture, you want to stay close to the ends as much as possible. If you want to take the weight off and the heaviness off and take the thickness out, then you gotta go a little bit closer to the roots. Sometimes you have to do that for really thick hair. You don't want to be overusing it or completely reliant on it, but it's a really helpful tool. Some people don't like the use of it and they don't approve of them, but I think it's a great tool. It's a very helpful and elegant tool. You do have to spend a bit of money on it and learn how to use it, but it does so many things that you couldn't possibly do with a scissor. And in a professional environment where time is money, why struggle with something and not take advantage of available tools? Okay, the styling. 99% of the time you have to start from the back. So I start from the crown. In this case, I'm following it forward. So I'm drawing it forward slightly to the left, which is, by the way, his natural pattern of growth. I'm just simply following it. And I'm drawing the sides down as well, back as well. Now from the parting, I'm going away. But if you notice the back, I'm not disturbing the back, and the back is still coming forward. The back is still coming forward without any resistance. That way, the back is not spiking at all. And I was able to manipulate the hair, or most of the hair, to the side. And now I'm gonna go back as well, and you'll see the back is still not gonna be disturbed. It's still gonna stay exactly the way it is now, coming forward and without any resistance or creating any cowlick or anything. I'm gonna be able to take half section of the back area and push it back up. So it's going up slightly to the side, but mainly I'm just trying to make it go up and back. So even here I'm making it go up and back. It's gonna naturally go slightly to the side. That's not our concern at the moment. It'll just do it on its own. So I'm just gonna manipulate the hair to go up and back without disturbing the back. Hope I'm making sense. And then in the end, I will turn the heat off and sort of freeze the hair into the place before I put product in. So I know it's a lot of sections and a lot of effort, but you can see it took me under a minute, and you can show your client the potential of their own hair without even using any hair product at this point. And look at that. So the back is not resisting. I can see there's a tiny bit of hair going up, but the product will look after it. No problem. Now I'm going to be doing the lineup. In this case, it should be very natural, and I decided to do it after styling it a bit because I can see anything that is going to stick out, and I can just sort of take care of it on the spot. So I'm keeping it natural, try not to go into the hairline, and then sort of pick up the hair and see if anything is sticking out. It's not going to be much, but any imperfections you see after styling, you can get rid of them right then and there. Same thing on the other side. Try not to go into the hairline and try to stay as low as possible. That's what people actually appreciate. They don't really like the lines that hard. Some people do, I guess. But with longer tops, it's never really a good idea. And even if your client really wants it, try to talk them out of it. It's your area of expertise, so sometimes they rely on you to teach them these things. Probably don't use this angle to do your razor work. I'm just probably being lazy. You want it to be leaning back or something. But I do have a lot of experience, so I sometimes get lazy. And one more tip I can give you about razor is usually when we get to this step, this is the last step, and if you're running late or you're not good with time like me, we get a little impatient. Always take a deep breath when you loading your shave head and know that it's actually over, and you're not gonna make any difference with time. Even if you're running late now, you can't make any difference really at this point. You can only make it worse. Finally, for the styling, I'm using a clay, which is the ideal product if you are trying to create some lift in the hair and you want some decent hold. If it's any oily or shiny, you will not really get that much height or a lift in the hair, which is what we are after in this case. You also need strong hold because we are trying to do something with someone's hair that they don't naturally want to do. So this is a really forced style because his hair naturally is very straight and I want to go down and forward, and we're making it go back to the side, which is exact opposite. So you need a lot of skill work and support from strong products to make it happen and make it last. And now you can notice I'm twisting the hair and I'm sort of not using the comb as much. In the last part, I just want it to look natural. I don't want it to be like that combed out retro look. We want it to look more like, he just threw some fingers in it and it just naturally looks like that. The least amount of effort you see in a style, the better the style looks. Alright, I'm just gonna seal the hair with the hairspray and leave you with it. Hey, it's crazy you made it to the end of the video. So if you have any thoughts or questions, you can always leave them in comment section. I try to get to all of them. And if you want to watch more videos like this, then go on my channel. And if you want to subscribe or like this video, I mean, it's totally up to you. Like, I can't tell you what to do, but hey, thank you for watching. And hopefully I'll see you next time.